All right, today on the podcast, man, we have a very special guest. We got somebody who I've followed for quite a while, somebody who is the president of the AND campaign, and also somebody who is a co-host for Church Politics podcast, which I'm a huge fan of. I'm talking about my guy, Justin Giboney. What's up, man?
Darius, how's it going, man?
It's going well. So we can talk about this politics stuff in a minute, but I got to get something off my chest. Every week I tune in to listen to your podcast, to get information on politics and whatnot, just to be more informative on those things, be well informed. And it seemed like every single episode you got an issue with my Lakers. So you didn't make it 20 seconds without talking about my Lakers. So let's get this out. What's the deal?
Well, first of all, if you're in Memphis, you should be focused on the Grizzlies, man. A team that actually has a chance that could make it to the playoffs, let alone make it into a play-in. I'll tell you what my issue with the Lakers is. I was a Kobe guy.
Okay.
I'm also a Jordan guy, which means I'm not a huge LeBron fan. I think he's a great guy outside of basketball. That's all cute. But I just don't like the conversation, bringing him into that GOAT conversation. And if you rest in peace, Kobe was a huge fan, loved his mentality, all that. And I think when you got a star that's ain't got that Jordan or Kobe mentality, you see what results you get. But I give y'all hats off for that championship, that I guess you could call it a championship, that y'all won a couple years ago in the bubble.
This guy, guys, this is gonna be a short interview. This is gonna be a very short interview. Because I gotta show self-control. So that's what I'm gonna try to do today.
Focus on the Grizzlies. Focus on the Grizzlies. You'll be good.
This is what I'll say. I'm 31. The Grizzlies weren't a thing until 2002. By then, my Laker fandom was already established. So let me just get that out there. And I also agree with you, actually. I actually agree with you on LeBron. I'm not a LeBron fan at all. I like the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey with LeBron.
Fair enough.
Kobe, absolute GOAT. Absolute GOAT. In every sense of the word to me. And also, I'm a big fan of MJ, so I won't even disagree with you there. All I ask is, for us Laker fans who are Christians, is that you don't cause us a stumble, man. That's all I ask. I don't think that's too much to ask.
I didn't know that you could be a Lakers fan and be a Christian, but now that I know that, I'll do better to try to show y'all some love. Don't hold your breath, though.
Wow. Okay. Hey, y'all heard it. So next few episodes, when we listen to the podcast, we expect not as much Laker hate. That's all. We came for information. There's
nothing to talk about. They're not in the playoffs, so I couldn't have much to say.
You know what? If y'all can't tell, Justin is very smart. He went to Vanderbilt, so this is one of these deals where you're not gonna win the argument. And correct me if I'm wrong. You also are a lawyer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm an attorney and political strategist out here in Atlanta. That's right.
Yeah. So this is going to be a politics episode, just for everybody to know. And I feel like we oftentimes want to talk about politics. We also want to be held accountable for what we talk about. Yeah. And if you guys have not picked up on it, Ryan is not here right now. Hopefully he will join on the back half of the interview, but Ryan is not here right now. But as far as politics go, how long have you been into that? When you were a student at Vanderbilt, when you were a student athlete, prior to, what brought about that passion?
I probably first got into politics heavy in 2008. And I worked on the campaign of a brother named, who was a state senator at the time, named Kasim Reed, who was running for mayor. And me and my friends, we would get together, we would talk about sports, or we would talk about politics. And one day I was like, man, we need to stop being so academic about this. Why don't we just get in the game? There's a mayor's race coming up, so we, got a little nerdy. We wrote memos on some of the top candidates, decided which one we want to support. He stood out, and we ended up working for his campaign. He ended up winning. And after that campaign, I just kind of was, in a good and bad way, kind of addicted to politics, started running campaigns, doing campaign strategy and all that stuff, man. And so I've been doing it since then.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of your podcast and the AND campaign and so on and so forth, just because, you care about social justice and biblical values. What's it been like to be somebody who is you work on a lot of Democratic campaigns, or you worked on a lot of Democratic campaigns, but you're a Christian, and what is that like for you, in some spaces? Because some people think those things can't mix. Yeah. So how do you kind of combat that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be tough. I mean, there are certainly issues that I don't agree with, and I think it's incumbent on Christians to kind of speak up in that regard. I don't think either party, I think, a Republican who's a Christian should have some conflicts and some tensions with some of the things that Republicans stand for. So I don't think, that issue is unique to Democrats. But it certainly can be somewhat uncomfortable. I try to focus on the issues that I think that are important. So whether it's, healthcare, immigration, how we treat the poor, things of that nature. Those are the things that I try to push and kind of focus on the issues, but also stand up on what I disagree on. And I think that's what, on both sides, Christians aren't doing well enough. We find that one side is worse than the other, and so we go with the side that's the least bad, and then we act like, the side that we're on can do no wrong. And that's just wrong. That's not how we should do it. I think we really should be willing to say, hey, I may vote one way or the other. I'm open to voting either way. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say what's right and say what's wrong. And I'm not going to let the party control my witness and my politics altogether.
Yeah, man, it's kind of like some of these LeBron fans out here who can't acknowledge that he may have some flaws in his game. They just say, hey, I know y'all finna argue, so I'm going to go ahead and say that, hey, LeBron's the GOAT. That's the end of the conversation. I'm going to talk about stats and not mentality or anything like that, and that's gonna be that. So I could definitely.
And you might have heard. I mean, I think that's true. And here's the thing with that. And you might have heard this before, but I have my Giboney sports tribalism theorem, where I say, we can be very tribal and very closed-minded and really unreasonable when it comes to sports. That's kind of what sports fanaticism is about, right? You ain't really gotta. Be honest and cheer for the team because they're the best or whatever. That's just your team, and I'm just gonna ride them whenever. I think sports is actually good for that. I think that's the best purpose that sports serves. But when you take that same mentality and bring it into politics, where you're talking about real life and death issues, but you bring the same mentality of you won't realize things are right or wrong, or you're just gonna acknowledge the good stuff on your side and the bad stuff on the other side. I think that's where we enter into a space where we really can be unfaithful with our public witness, based on not just being honest about what's going on.
Yeah, no, that's real, and that's good, man. And I think that in a lot of ways, you just hit the nail on the head of what's wrong with politics today. Nobody want to be held accountable or anything like that, and nobody wanting to hold people accountable. So that's super interesting. So talk to me about the AND campaign. How did you, come up with the name? How did you get started? What led to that?
Yeah, so it probably started around 2012. I was a delegate at the Democratic National Convention. Some things went down at that convention that I thought were just disrespectful to Christian Democrats. And, folks really weren't asking for our say. They were just assuming that we were going to go along with everything that they said. So I went home after that and had a tough time. And I said, regardless of what happens, I have to distinguish myself. And I think Christians who are politically active and they're in a party, need to be able to distinguish themselves from other people in those parties. And that's when the initial concept for the AND campaign came about. I didn't call it that. It went through different renditions of names, but I just started meeting with anybody who I knew who was in politics and was a serious Christian, and just started building relationships. And slowly God started giving me a vision for the AND campaign, which is really about engaging politics, not as partisans. I've been a Democrat my whole life. But at the end of the day, I really don't care about I don't do this for the party. If the party don't like me or whatever, if they're wrong, it doesn't matter to me. I'm gonna try to do what's right. And that's what we want Christians to see, not the partisanship or ideology, but to be focused more so on biblical principles, which I think can help some of the polarization in the church. Because one of the things that I saw being in politics for a while was that there was this false dichotomy in politics. There was this false choice that if you cared about social justice, you go all the way to the left, and you drop some of your biblical convictions, whether it be the Christian sexual ethic and things like that. If you cared about moral issues, quote unquote, you go all the way to the right, and you wouldn't be as worried about compassion, the poor, and things like that. And I just don't think that's how the gospel works. I think the gospel is about justice and moral order. I think it's about compassion and conviction, and we shouldn't let our parties take us away from the full really the whole gospel and what our public witness should be.
Yeah. And tell me this, man, because I feel like for me, what I see in politics, especially as it relates to social media, is that the algorithm has made things so much worse. like to the point where like now we're all being clustered in these echo chambers, and we live in a false reality of what truth is. And I just find that I find that like super intriguing, like in the time that we're in now, especially like when you consider like when Trump won, people's like, oh dang, how did he win? And then Biden won, people are like, oh dang, how did he win? It's not even possible, but it is. But like these echo chambers. So how do you think like echo chambers play a role in politics today?
Man, it's funny that you bring that up because I just recorded the latest episode of Church Politics Today, and it's called "Why Algorithms Are Weakening the Church." And it's exactly what you said. Once the algorithm says we like a certain opinion or a point of view, it's going to keep feeding us that. And what happens is that flattens reality for us. It flattens what's actually going on because we only see one perspective, and we only see the perspectives that agree with us. And so we can see the same issue and have a completely different understanding of the facts. And if two people can look at facts and see some differences, a completely different reality, that means there's some lies in there, and we're kind of believing lies. And so Christians, the biggest thing is to step out of those boxes, man. One of the things that disappoints me the most is that Christians, whether it be, folks from the traditional black church or folks, in the more kind of white evangelical churches, we talk through intermediaries. Like we don't even have communications. We assume we know what the other is thinking, and we don't even have those conversations. So I think we need to step back. We need to realize that neither of our ideological tribes are honest. They want to win. And if we're not savvy enough and aware enough to push back when they're lying, to push back on narratives that are false, then we're actually adding to the problem. And that's the biggest issue we have right now. Christians aren't stepping up. We're adding to the issue because we're not thinking critically. And I think the Bible calls us to examine ourselves and think through issues critically.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Hey, I want to see, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, Ryan is here, y'all. Ryan is here.
All right, so yeah, running a little late, but definitely just jumped on. It's Ryan Thomas with the podcast. What's up, Darius? What's up,
How's it
Justin?
going,
How
bro?
y'all doing? I don't know what y'all been talking about because I'm late, but good to meet you, man. I wanted to ask you a question about some of the voter suppression bills. Have y'all talked about that?
No.
So we know that there's a few states that are putting in place voter suppression bills, pretty much requiring people to do certain different things in order to vote for the presidency and possibly for other smaller governmental roles as well. So my question is, what are your thoughts on that, and have y'all addressed that at any point?
Yeah, we actually have addressed that. Georgia is one of those states where, you're saying that a voter suppression law, I think depending on who you ask, they would call it election reform. But I think the main point is that in some instances, it's making it harder for people to vote. I see that as a major issue that all Christians should be worried about, not just folks in the Democratic Party, not just folks who find themselves on the left, or even just black people. This is about fairness. This is about human agency and the ability to make sure that people who have been denied the right to vote in this country for far too long are no longer denied that. And so we've spoken out about it ad nauseum on the podcast. We've written statements. We've been out in the streets and done everything we could do to push. I mean, we've spoken to politicians, elected officials, all that to let people know that this is an issue that we're very serious about, and folks should not have to. It should not be a struggle for folks to get registered. It should not be a struggle for folks to get to the polls. That's what a democracy is about. And if you can't ensure that people have a fair opportunity to get to the polls, then you really don't have the type of democracy that you say you do. It's fundamental to people really respecting and believing in the system. And it's something that we need to clear up ASAP.
Yeah, that's good. And I actually had a question kind of related to that. And we're going to get to Democrats in a minute, I promise you. But, like, as it relates to, like, laws that can be called voter suppression laws, whatever it is, it's making people more difficult. It's making it more difficult for people to vote. Yeah. Like, why do you think that that's always something that's associated with the Republican Party?
Because black people vote for Democrats. I think there's a race element to it, but I'll be honest with you. I don't even know if it's mostly race. I think it's just about who votes for who. I can't assure you that the corporatist kind of Democrats, if black people voted the other way, I can't assure you that they would be on the front lines of making sure that everybody got to the polls as easy as possible. So a lot of it is just who votes for who. I think it's wrong. That doesn't make it right. But I think the motivation is where the votes are coming from. And we just got to have people in office. We have a society, we as Christians have to have enough integrity for it not to be about where we think the votes are going to go, but be about upholding a true democracy. And we, as you can tell, we still have a ways to go to get to that point.
Yeah, that's good. And like, again, like as it relates to like politics and whatnot, like I think that we'll all agree that Joe Biden has not like slam dunked as a president. He's not been a slam dunk by any way, shape, or form. And it seems like it would be a ripe time for like black people specifically to consider some other options as it relates to voting. But then you see like the stuff about CRT and all the stuff like critical race theory in classrooms and stuff like that, and it's like this is what we choose to focus on. Like why do you think like these are the issues that we choose to focus on when like I'm a school counselor, so I'm in schools every day, so I know what it is, and I'm in Memphis, and like that's not what's going on in classrooms. Nor do I think that many of those people can even define what critical race theory truly is. But like, why do you think these are the things that we choose to like fight about politically?
Because there are certain political strategists that look for wedge issues, and unfortunately, a lot of Christians buy into it. CRT, when it comes to elementary schools and grade schools and all that stuff, is not the issue that a lot of people are making it out to be. But it's an issue that you can get your base fired up about. So if I'm a conservative political strategist, I say, hey, there is this issue, and it sounds so bad. I mean, critical race theory to somebody who isn't up on those type of issues sounds like something that's just that could really be dangerous. And so you have this boogeyman, you bring this boogeyman to the fore, and you get your base really riled up because you're talking about their kids and things of that nature. And so on one end, on the short term, it might actually work, right? Because there's going to be people that are fired up. It's going to get them to the polls. It's going to get them active. I think what you're saying in the long term of, the Republican Party or conservatives kind of expanding their big tent, it actually shoots them in the foot because they could be getting people of color, more people of color to vote for them, but they pick out these race issues and these other very divisive issues that keep black people away. I think that I'm not going to sit here and say that the Democratic Party does a great job of doing what they say they're going to do for African Americans either. But at the end of the day, the CRT back and forth, just it being overblown in the way that it is, really hurts the ability of I think of a lot of black folks to even consider changing parties or voting for certain people.
Yeah. And you're right. And actually, you make a really good point right there because options, I almost feel like there's no really win for the black community in the Democratic or the Republican side. So we just try to go with the softest blow. You know what I mean? And tell me what your thoughts are about the situation that happened recently with Jackie Hill Perry. Like, I know that your page posted a few things supporting her. We talked about it on the podcast as well. Ketanji was it was a picture of Ketanji and her daughter during the time she was being roasted, trying to figure out if she's going to be a justice. And she said a mood, and then it just blew up in the comment section. Why do you think that people, it's almost like Christianity is Christianity until politics comes into the picture, and now it's like right Christianity, wrong Christianity, the way to be a Christian, the way to not be a Christian. They try to treat her like she said something crazy when she said it's a mood.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a wrong way to be a Christian, but I think what I hear you getting at is it ain't based just on somebody's politics, right? Or them recognizing that us having our first black female Supreme Court justice is a big deal. And that's really all she was doing. So you have somebody who, and I just have so much respect for Jackie Hill Perry and all that she does and what she stands on. I mean, she stands on scripture in the public square and articulates herself almost better than anybody I know in that space. I mean, she just does an excellent job.
Second to none.
Yeah, so she recognizes that a sister has made a huge achievement and that the U.S. has made a huge achievement, and all of a sudden people act like that means that she has co-signed every single issue that secular progressives support. So now she's pro-abortion. Now she's pro-pedophilia. And it's like, yeah, what are y'all even talking about? You got a sister who just wrote a book on holiness, an excellent book on holiness and the importance of holiness, but now she's not a true Christian because you disagree with, her shouting out a particular leader. It's unfortunate. Again, it's that fear and desperation, and this is why the Bible tells us we're not supposed to live in fear. When you live in fear, when you always find yourself feeling like you're being attacked all the time, and you're focused on those attacks, whether they're real or just perceived, you become something that you shouldn't be, and that's just a perfect example of that. Even if you would have had a different person be a justice, if you could, a lot of people, I saw a lot of conservatives doing this too. So we got to keep in mind, this is a subset of the body of Christ who has these problems. I saw other folks like, hey, I don't necessarily agree with her positions on abortion or whatever, but I do realize that this is a big moment for the country. That's what the mature Christians were trying to say, I think, on both sides of the aisle. And that's really the best way to respond to it.
They're more objective. Yeah, they're more objective. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about the midterms in 2024. Let's talk about both of those things right now. I feel like there's a sense among millennials that like we got played. Like as far as like Joe Biden like talking about like I'm gonna forgive $10,000 of student loans. He didn't say he was gonna forgive all student loans, but he said 10,000. That was a number that he said multiple times. So he says that there's no real change as it relates to immigration, and like there's a lot of things that just didn't happen, and it feels like unmet promises that kind of entice. It was a lot of things. It was a lot of things that's like in his control, and a lot of things that are not in his control. But it feels like it was a lot of unkept promises thus far. And it's only been a year and so on and so forth. But like, it doesn't feel like there's any action being pushed that way. So I'm wondering if you feel like that there's going to be like a fewer turnout in 2024 and in the midterm elections.
Yeah, man. I get it. I hope that's not the case. But the truth of the matter is, there have been a lot of promises that haven't been met. I think there's certainly, on some aspects, especially when it comes to the African American community, the administration, the administration could have done more, and people are going to recognize that, and people are going to hold them accountable in one way or another. I would hope that it wouldn't mean not coming out to vote. I think there are a lot of different ways to hold folks accountable, no matter who you vote for. I'm not saying you got to go out and vote for the same person again, or vote for the same party again. But I think not being active doesn't necessarily send the message that people think it sends. I think it's always important to be active. There are a lot of different ways to hold people accountable. There's a lot of different ways to make sure your voice is heard. And we'll just see how people do it. I hope they do it. I hope they don't do it by turning away. I fear that may be part of the response. But from in one way or another, people do have to be held responsible for what they didn't do. I would just keep in mind that doesn't mean that you necessarily hand the ball to others who may do even less. But you gotta, I think every race, every election, you really gotta weigh what your priorities are, who you think will get closest to those priorities, and then just realize that it's not just about voting on that day, that the political process is really what happens in between the elections as well, and just keep that in kind of in your line of sight.
Yeah, it just feels like the perfect storm, if I'm being honest with you, between like some of the laws that's being passed is going to make it more difficult. And I know a lot of people voted like in 2020, but like it was a lot of laws as it related to COVID that allowed the process to be a little bit easier. So I'm just curious to see what it looks like in 2024, more so than 2022. It just really intrigues me.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I mean, it's gonna be an uphill battle, especially in 2022. Who knows if things turn around? I mean, with inflation going up, the left is looking, and Biden they're looking at a very tough few cycles unless something changes drastically soon.
Yeah, I mean, we literally on the verge of World War III. It feels like, you know what I mean. We don't know as of right now, but 2024. Donald Trump is also stepping back into the scene. saying he wants to run again, and I feel like that that's one of my biggest concerns, actually, having Donald Trump back in office in 2024 possibly, and I guess we just have to see how it all.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. That's not desirable to me either. I don't understand why, even if you felt like even if you're somebody who felt like he was a better choice than Biden, I don't know why you would bring him back in 2024. I guess maybe you felt like you bought into the big lie that, the election was stolen and you want to get him back in there or something. But I really think, unfortunately, and I talk about this on the next episode too, it's really about this cult following, man. And unfortunately, a lot of people in that cult following for Trump are Christians. That's just disappointing.
Yeah, and it's funny because I believe the big lie, quote unquote, I think we're seeing why there was Russian interference in our election. Because what Putin's doing now was the plan all along. I want to take over Ukraine. That's what I want to do. I want that back, like back in the Soviet Union, and like back in the old days. And Donald Trump would have supported that move. Rather, he's facing issues from the United States because we don't support it, because Biden doesn't support it. So that's my theory. Nobody has.
Yeah, I mean, there's different theories, in that regard. I think generally when you talk about the big lie, you're talking about the idea that, what January 6th was about, that somehow progressives or Democrats stole the election from Trump. That's not exactly what's happened. I think there has been some debunking of the connection between Trump and Putin too. Not to say that there wasn't some obstruction of justice and some issues there as well. The bottom line is Americans have to find a way to come together, Christians especially. And this isn't, nothing I'm saying is just a huge endorsement of Biden and that administration either. I mean, if you look what's going on at the border, it's no more humane. I mean, it's some terrible things going on down there. The economy's still in shambles. So there's a lot of room for improvement there. But what I want to see more than just to promote any candidate is Christians being more thoughtful about how we engage and pulling back from party. Not saying you got to leave your party, but not letting your party dictate everything you do. The problem that I have, because we can talk about, what happened to Jackie Hill Perry. I think that's very important. But then you got a lot of Christians on the left that just go along with anything that the secular progressives say and don't ever push back, even if it hurts the church. And so there's just a lack of thoughtfulness and really a lack of courage. I think you see a lot of people's ambition kind of outpacing their faith, and Christians just need to do better in general in that regard.
That was a bar. Hey, that was a bar.
That was a bar. That was good. I like it. You said, what did he say? He said, you see a lot of Christians, outpacing?
I said their ambition outpacing their faith. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. That's good. Write that down.
Facts. So, how do you think, because I do feel like there's a huge divide right now, like with us being in echo chambers and whatnot, like whether you want to or not, like to some capacity you are if you're on social media. I feel like there's such a gap in Christianity as it relates to politics, and like people like going to churches because of politics and stuff like that. Like, how do you think that like we engage civically with one another in the midst of everything that's going on right now?
I think we engage like we don't know that politics isn't an ultimate thing. I think we engage like we have a lack of faith. We engage like we believe that the Republican Party or the Democratic Party is going to save us. And that's not to say that the issues that we're dealing with aren't important. Some of these are life or death issues. But as a Christian, in knowing, eternal things, and in knowing that ultimately we have the victory, we need to engage just in a better way. It's not about, again, that desperation and fear. It's about being tenacious about the issues. It's about choosing the right issues and doing it the right way. But you don't have to mistreat people. You don't have to get ugly. You don't have to reflect the world to have serious political and social and cultural engagement. And until Christians can back up and say, hey, we've got to set a better example, until we're willing to lose once or twice just to make sure that our witness is tight, to make sure that our witness is faithful, then we'll just be reflecting the world and adding to the problem. And that's what needs to change, in my opinion.
All right, so I'm not gonna lie. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I threw you an alley-oop and you may have missed it. I know you went to Vanderbilt and they're not really hooping over there and stuff like that. But I'm just saying. You came from my Lakers earlier, so
I did.
I had to just.
I did.
What answer were you looking for?
I was hoping. Honestly, I was hoping that you was gonna plug your book.
Oh, okay. Well, I can do that too, man. I can do that too.
Yeah.
One thing I think and I really do think this because this is the reason we wrote the book, is compassion and conviction, which is the AND Campaign's Guide to Faithful Civic Engagement. And really, it's about helping Christians, equipping Christians to engage more faithfully, to back up and say, what is a Christian framework for engagement? Which means we don't just engage as progressives or conservatives. We engage with social justice and moral order in mind. We engage with the idea of love and truth. And unfortunately, our political landscape kind of separates love and truth, separates justice and righteousness. And what we're trying to do with the AND campaign is help Christians put those things back together, which to us means that regardless of what party you're in, you're going to have to challenge your party. If you always agree with your party, if you always agree with your ideological tribe, so if you're a Christian who cares about social justice like I do, and you always agree with everything that secular, progressive, activists, or academics say, then you're not being faithful, because everything they're saying is not biblical. But for some reason, we're kind of looking for validation from those folks. We can work with them. We should work with them. We should partner with people who are trying to do good things. But we shouldn't agree with everything they say, because everything they say isn't right. And so until we're able to have that kind of confidence, until we're able to have that kind of courage and think critically, again, we're not going to be having the witness that's really going to heal the church and heal the land.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, man. And I don't know how long y'all talk, but I'm pretty sure we're about to wrap up. I want to ask you a quick personal question. Do you listen to hip hop? So I want to express this to people out there that I was talking to on Facebook earlier today, right? There's a difference between favorite rapper and greatest rapper, right? Mm-hmm. My favorite that's currently doing it is T.I.
Currently?
Y'all hear me?
T.I.'s doing jokes. Right. He's getting booed off stages.
He's a comedian though. He got booed the other night at the Barclays, but it's all good. The greatest rapper to me of all time is Biggie, B.I.G., Biggie Small. So who is your favorite right now, and who is the greatest in your eyes?
Man, I gotta go with K-Dot. I gotta go with Kendrick Lamar as my favorite in the moment. I'm usually a Kanye dude, but Kanye ain't really dropping bars as much anymore, right? So
He dropping beats.
Yeah, he's doing beats and singing and other stuff. And I ain't hating on him. I'm just saying he's not, just rapping right now. So I'll go with K-Dot. Mm-hmm. And then of all time, I'm from the west side of things, man. I'm from Denver. I got to go with Pac.
Pac, hey, 100%.
Already know
100%. I'm with that too.
Number two for me. Mm-hmm. You said that's the greatest.
Yeah, Pac, definitely. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think Toby my favorite right now. Honestly, like I feel like he dropping so much music like so consistently. I'm like, bro, how are you doing this? Why are you this confident? Like most folks don't and he don't drop albums like that either. So maybe it helps, but he just drops single after single after single after single. So I'm with that too.
Yeah,
real quick.
And look, man, y'all gotta stop booing my boy T.I. now. No. T.I. trying to learn how to do comedy. Got to work with him a little bit. Give him a little time.
Hey, he needs some. Hey, this is what happened. He getting baptized by fire. This is his fault. This is what happened. This is what happened when you don't got real friends. Because a real friend wouldn't have let him go out like that.
It does seem like he jumped in the deep end, and there probably was smaller stages he might have wanted to go on prior to jumping in there, but. Wish him the best, but I mean, T.I. was one of I listened to T.I. quite a bit, so I think he has some classics out there too.
Yeah, all right. So we got a friend of the podcast named Matt Hudson. He's been on a podcast multiple times. Y'all about to partner with him. This episode will come out 2 days before that partnership. So plug the event, get our people to Atlanta.
Man. If you're in Atlanta, even if you're in Memphis and you got some extra time, bro, we are having a revival called the Orthodoxy and Orthopraxy Revival. Matthew Hudson, the comedian, hilarious comedian. You got to follow him on social media. He's going to be the host, and so we're looking forward to that. We got the revivalist. If you have not heard Charlie Dates preach, Dr. Charlie Dates, you need to Google that name. Go to YouTube, Google some of those sermons. Charlie Dates gets down. He's going to be the revivalist. Before him, we got a lecture coming from Dr. C.J. Rhodes out of Jackson, Mississippi, not too far from Memphis. It's going to be a good time. You also got Lisa Fields, who's from the Jude 3 projects. He's going to be speaking. I mean, it's going to be going down in Atlanta. So if you can get here, it's going to be well worth it. We're going to be at Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, where Benjamin E. Mays used to pastor. I'm just really excited about all that's going down, man. It's going to be a good time, and that's on April 22nd.
April 22nd, man. I talked to Matthew yesterday. I told him I may make the trip, so we'll see. We'll see. I may have to pull up.
Make it happen, bro.
Y'all got too many heavy hitters out there. So yeah. But before we get you out of here, I need your finals prediction. You already talked crazy about my Lakers or whatever, so I need your finals prediction. That's sure to be wrong. Go ahead.
Sure to be wrong. Well, it won't be the Lakers. Wow. So I'll start with that part. It won't be the Lakers. For anybody who didn't know that, because I know at the beginning of the season, you and a couple other folks probably thought it would be. I'm gonna go ahead and go with the. It's hard to go against Phoenix, man. It's not my squad, but I think they're just consistent, man. They're consistent. I would love to see the Nets. I'd love to see exciting teams like Golden State or something like that. But I don't know. I'll go with.
You sleeping Phoenix. On the Grizzlies? Are you sleeping on the Grizzlies?
I love the Grizzlies. Hey, man, I would love to see the Grizzlies win. I would love to see the Grizzlies win. I don't know if they got quite enough right now, but that I would be rooting for them all the way, for sure.
Hey, as a season ticket holder, they need to make that happen. They need to go ahead and make that happen.
Yeah, they do.
But Ryan, what do you think, real quick, before we get them off?
That's about the finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Look, I've been in Memphis for 10 years, and I've never been this confident in the Grizzlies as I am this year. I feel like they got it. They rolling. You know what I'm saying? We got our guy back. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. We got the superstar back on the court, man. It's looking good for the Grizzlies. So I'm gonna give it to the Grizzlies, honestly, just out of GP.
Dang. So just to be clear, in football, Ryan predicted the Cowboys to win the Super Bowl in Week 3. So I've lost all my confidence in the Grizzlies to make it that far. Hey. But if you're still listening, man, we appreciate y'all. We appreciate Justin for being on the podcast, man. Follow us on Instagram at Unconformed Podcast, and also subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you want to see this interview, it will be on YouTube. It will be readily available at the time that it's released on podcast. So follow us on YouTube, also at Unconformed Podcast. I didn't ask you this before, Justin. So if you can't do it, it's cool. But you end every church politics podcast in the dopest way. So I would ask you to end this episode in this way.
So you want to end the episode with my saying?
Yeah.
All right, we can do that. What is it? There's a cross that neither political conservatism nor progressivism is fit to bear. There's a civic hearing in need of faithful witnesses who love social justice and won't surrender the truth to be loved by the world. Politic with the boldness and compassion of Jesus Christ. Until next time, we'll holla at you.
Darius Watkins.
Hey, Ryan Thomas.
Unconformed Podcast. We out.